Yi Sun-sin, the man who changed history with 12 ships. In 1597, a miracle unfolded on the seas of Joseon. Facing over 100 Japanese warships, one commander stood with only 12 ships at his command. It was a battle that seemed impossible to win. Everything appeared to be coming to an end. And in that moment, Admiral Yi Sun-sin said, "There are still 12 warships left to us. If we fight with all our strength, we can still stand against them." Yi Sun-sin, how did he become a legend? His story begins now. Born with the fate of the sea, on April 28, 1545, in Gyeongsang-dong, Hansung, today's Seoul, a child was born. His name was Yi Sun-sin, the third son of Yi Jiang and Lady Bayan of the Chogi Bayan clan. His father, Yi Jiang, was a learned Confucian scholar. His mother, Lady Bayan, was no ordinary woman. She was extremely strict about her son's education. She named her 4 boys after sage kings of ancient China, the first after Fuxi, the second after Emperor Yao, the third after Emperor Shun, and the fourth after Yu the Great. In the name Sun, given to the third son, Yi Sun-sin, she placed the ideal of true loyalty and righteousness. Young Yi Sun-sin was not like other children. He would carve wood into bows and arrows, gather the neighborhood children, and play at war. Even adults could not take his games lightly because for him, they weren't just games. Yi Sun-sin already had a clear purpose in life, to become a general who would protect his country. That dream would never change. 3 failures, and passing the military exam at 32, Yi Sun-sin began preparing for the military service examination at the age of 28. With encouragement and support from his father-in-law, Bang Jin, he studied military science and strategy, and devoted himself to training for the test. But his first attempt ended in disaster. In 1572, during the test at the training bureau Hunryan 1, he fell from his horse in a riding accident. People thought he had been knocked unconscious. Instead, he quickly stripped bark from a branch, wrapped his injured leg, and finished the exam. And still, he failed. "One failure will not break me." Yi Sun-sin stood up again. 4 years later, in 1576, at the age of 32, he finally passed the military exam. He placed 4th in the secondary tier Biaongwa. It might sound late, but the average age of successful candidates at the time was around 34. In reality, he passed rather quickly. His first post, however, was a lowly one, an acting training official at the training bureau, essentially a trainee officer. From there, his path was anything but smooth. As he moved through various posts gaining field experience, he refused to compromise his principles. When a superior attempted to cut down the Royal Polonia trees of the Jella left naval station for personal use, Yi Sun-sin refused to obey. State property could not be used for private purposes. This was his conviction. That single act of defiance earned him serious resentment. But later, other superiors recognized his integrity, and began to value him highly. Yi Sun-sin also distinguished himself in battles against Jurchen forces in the north. But in 1587, during the Battle of Nokdun Island, a defeat caused by his superiors' poor support was blamed on Yi. He was imprisoned and stripped of rank. He was ordered to serve in the army as a common soldier in plain white clothes, a punishment known as Baekui Jonggun. This was his first great trial. Yet in a second campaign at Nokdun Island, Yi Sun-sin captured a Jurchen commander, achieving a major victory and earning reinstatement. Only those who endure hardship can taste true victory. Yi Sun-sin learned this truth early. Appointed naval commander of the Jella left province. In 1591, at the age of 47, Yi Sun-sin was appointed naval commander of the Jella left province Jella Jwado Shogun Jel Dosa, a high-ranking general officer of the 3rd senior grade. Many officials opposed his appointment, insisting he lacked naval experience. But King Shonjo trusted him. When Yi arrived at his post, the seas of Joseon were poorly defended. The morale of the navy was shattered. Their weapons were worn out, and there was no coherent strategy. Yi Sun-sin changed everything with leadership rooted in the field. He drilled his sailors relentlessly. He repaired and improved weapons. He developed new tactics. Most important of all, he revived the turtle ship, or Geobuksan. The turtle ship was a revolutionary warship. Its deck was covered with armored plating. It mounted cannons in the bow, and it had an internal structure that allowed many soldiers to move and fight safely under cover. At the time, the Japanese Navy favored close quarters, boarding battles, climbing onto enemy decks and fighting hand to hand. Yi Sun-sin sought to overturn this style of warfare. His vision was to keep distance, dominate with artillery, and break the enemy before they could board. The turtle ship was completed just before the outbreak of the Imjin War in 1592. The Imjin War begins, and the first victory at Okpo, on April 13, 1592 lunar calendar. A fleet of about 700 ships under Toyotomi Hideyoshi invaded Pusan. The Imjin War had begun. On land, the Joseon army collapsed quickly. The capital, Hansung, fell on May 3. But at sea, something very different was happening. On May 7 lunar calendar, Yi Sun-sin fought his first naval battle at Okpo Bay. He attacked 26 Japanese ships anchored in harbor and sank them. He also rescued Korean captives held on board. That afternoon, he won another victory off Happo. Victory at sea is still possible. This message lit a spark of hope in a country drowning in despair. Yi Sun-sin's name spread across the land. While the Joseon army collapsed on land, the Joseon navy was beginning to rise. The Battle of Hansando and the Crane Wing Formation. On July 8 lunar calendar, Yi Sun-sin destroyed 13 Japanese ships at Sachun Bay. This was the Battle of Sachun, where the turtle ship saw its first combat. Yi Sun-sin was wounded by a bullet that pierced his left shoulder, but he never stopped directing the battle. And then, on August 8 lunar calendar, one of the greatest battles in naval history took place, the Battle of Hansando. Yi Sun-sin's fleet met a Japanese force of 73 ships near Hansando, 36 large ships, 24 medium, and 13 small. For this battle, he applied an ancient formation from military classics, the Crane Wing Formation. His ships spread out like the wings of a crane. He lured the Japanese fleet into open waters, then enveloped them. Once the Japanese were trapped inside the ark, Joseon cannons Jija Chongtong, Hyonya Chongtong, Sungja Chongtong and others unleashed a devastating barrage. After breaking the Japanese line with cannon fire, the Joseon navy closed in to fight at close quarters. The result was an overwhelming victory. 44 Japanese ships were sunk, only 4 managed to escape. With this single battle, Japan's supply lines by sea were shattered. Their plan to advance further, including into the Yellow Sea, collapsed. They could no longer freely push toward the west coast. Everything changed from that day. Slander, crisis, and a second fall to the ranks. But the war was not over, and neither were the storms of court politics. As Yi Sun-sin kept winning, even King Shonjo began to feel uneasy. When Japanese naval attacks began to decrease, officials at court accused Yi of being too passive. They wanted him to launch deeper, riskier offensives. Yi Sun-sin, however, understood what was really happening. The Japanese were building coastal fortresses and preparing traps. If he charged in recklessly, the fleet could be annihilated. So he chose caution. On January 27, 1597 lunar calendar, Yi Sun-sin was removed from his post as commander. His position went to Won Gyun. Yi was taken in chains to the capital, imprisoned, and nearly executed. He avoided death only because of a petition written by Right State Councilor Jiang Tak. Instead of execution, he was ordered to once again serve as a common soldier, under the supreme commander, Guanyul, a second Baekui Jonggun. Then came a personal tragedy. His mother, Lady Bayan, heard of her son's release from prison, and set out by boat to see him. But on May 11 lunar calendar, she died aboard the ship before she could meet him. Yi Sun-sin never saw his mother's final moments. The grief weighed heavily on him, and an even greater disaster was about to strike. Under Won Gyun's command, the Joseon navy was caught off guard and crushed by the Japanese. At the Battle of Chilkyaliang, on July 16 lunar calendar, the Korean fleet was virtually annihilated. Most of the Paniksan warships were burned or captured. Control of the sea passed entirely to Japan. It was a time of utter despair. The court even issued an order to abolish the navy altogether. Chapter 7. The Miracle of 13 Ships. The Battle of Myeongnyang. That was when Yi Sun-sin returned. The court reinstated him as commander of the naval forces of the 3 provinces Samdu Shugun Tong Jessa. But the fleet he was given was pitifully small. On August 29 lunar calendar, at Biak-Pajin near Jindo, only 12 usable warships had gathered. His rank had also been downgraded. King Shonjo trusted him, but had to consider the eyes of suspicious ministers. Yi Sun-sin sent a memorial to the throne. Your servant still has 12 warships remaining. If we fight with all our strength, we can still stand against the enemy. Though the number of ships is small, as long as I live, the enemy will not dare to despise us. On September 15 lunar calendar, Yi Sun-sin moved his base to Yujiang and Jindo. There was a narrow strait there called Uldulmak. Uldulmak is only about 294 meters wide. The current can reach speeds of 6.5 meters per second, one of the fastest tidal currents in the world. This was the place Yi Sun-sin chose. At dawn on September 16 lunar calendar, around 130 Japanese ships entered Uldulmak on the rising tide. The current favored them. It was flood tide, conditions advantageous for the Japanese. They were confident. After all, Yi's fleet numbered only 13 ships. One more ship had joined in the meantime. The battle began. Yi's flagship opened fire first, and the lead Japanese ships went down. The Joseon fleet slowly retreated, giving the impression of weakness. Thinking victory was at hand, the Japanese pressed in deeper and deeper into the strait. Then noon passed, and the tide began to turn. The current shifted from flood to ebb. The water now drove against the Japanese ships. Chaos erupted. Hundreds of Japanese ships were crowded together in the narrow strait, crashing into each other as the current pushed them back. Korean cannon fire rained down relentlessly, and beneath the waters of Uldulmak, Yi Sun-sin had laid iron chains, heavy cables weighing hundreds of kilograms. Many Japanese ships snagged on the chains and capsized. By around 5 p.m., the battle was over. Of the roughly 130 Japanese ships, about 30 were sunk in the opening phase, and many more were destroyed or wrecked by the current, the chains, and Joseon cannon fire. The result was a crushing victory. All 13 Korean ships survived the battle. With this, Japan's combined land-sea operation collapsed. The course of the later war, known as the Imjin War, began to reverse. Chapter 8. The Battle of Noryang and the Hero's Final Day. On August 18, 1598 lunar calendar, Toyotomi Hideyoshi of Japan died. Before his death, he ordered his armies to withdraw from Korea. The Japanese now had to return home, but more than 150 ships and thousands of soldiers still remained along Korea's southern coast. Yi Sun-sin would not let this final chance slip away. Before dawn on November 19 lunar calendar, about 70 Joseon warships and 400 Ming Chinese ships launched an attack on the Japanese fleet gathered in the Noryang Strait. Yi Sun-sin fought alongside General Chen Lin of the Ming Navy. Out of roughly 500 Japanese ships, around 200 were destroyed and 150 more heavily damaged. The battle raged until midday. As the Japanese tried to flee toward Guanyiampo, Yi Sun-sin and his allied fleet pursued. Then, a bullet struck Yi Sun-sin and passed through his body. The 54-year-old admiral fell in the midst of battle. Even in his final moments, he gave one last order. The battle is at its height. Do not let my death be known. Even as he died, he thought only of the fight and his men. He feared that news of his death would break their morale. So his officers covered his body and continued the battle as though he were still alive. The 7 long years of the Imjin War and the Imjin War came to an end with this final victory. Chapter 9. An Immortal Legacy. Immediately after his death, Yi Sun-sin was posthumously promoted to the highest civil rank, Chief State Councilor Yuaong, Senior First Rank. In 1643, during the reign of King Injo, he was given the posthumous title Chungmyo, Loyal and Martial. From then on, he was known as Lord Chungmyo, Yi Sun-sin. His war diary, Nanjung Ilgi War Diary of Yi Sun-sin, has been inscribed on UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. The diary is not just a record of battles and tactics, it reveals the inner life of a commander, who wrestled with fear, doubt, and sorrow, yet never stopped defending his country. At the United States Naval Academy, Yi Sun-sin's tactics are still studied today. The Battle of Myeongnyang is considered one of the greatest naval engagements in history. There is no other case where a fleet of just 13 ships defeated an enemy force of several hundred. The turtle ship has become a symbol of Korea's advanced naval technology of the time. The modern Korean Navy named its first destroyer, Rox Chungmyeong Yi Sun-sin, in his honor. Epilogue. Emotional close. Yi Sun-sin was more than a brilliant general. He was a man who rose again and again from the depths of despair. 3 failures at the military exam, unjust imprisonment, political slander and suspicion, the death of his mother. He endured every hardship. He was a leader who obeyed orders, yet never betrayed his principles. He stood against corruption. He refused to sacrifice what was right for personal gain. And in the darkest hour of his country, he created hope. When he defeated a massive enemy fleet with only 13 ships, it was more than just a naval victory. It was a miracle that saved a nation. What is his greatest legacy? It is not just his tactics, nor the turtle ships, nor his undefeated battle record. It is this: to fight with all your strength, with an unshakable will to win. This is the message Yi Sun-sin left behind. This is why, centuries later, we still remember his name. The courage of one person who loved his homeland. That courage still lingers over the waves, and his spirit continues to inspire us today. And this script is based on historical records, including the Imjin War diary of Yi Sun-sin, the annals of King Shonjo, and the annals of the Joseon dynasty.